Hello and welcome back for another Christmas tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you a double scenery with an epoxy drip. But first we need to go ahead and spray paint the tumbler so that we can glitter this magical custom mix from AB Designs. So I prefer to use my spray paint as my adhesive, and it worked really well for this custom mix, which you can see has a lot of chunky. So typically with the spray paint glitter method, I usually highly recommend fine or extra fine glitter, not necessarily the chunky. However, I decided to run it and it went perfectly. So I went ahead and glittered the whole thing, and as I would normally, shake off all that excess glitter, allow this to dry, and then you're gonna wanna seal it with clear seal from Rust-Oleum. And do me a favor, please do not judge me on my janky football. I've had this for a really long time, and hey, I just use what I have on hand. Once you've allowed your tumbler to dry and you have clear sealed it and you have pat down all that chunky bits from the tumbler, we're then ready to go in for our first coat of epoxy. For my first coat, I am using Fast Set from Counterculture DIY. Like most tumblers, when you use chunky, they do require a second coat of epoxy, which I did do off camera. So after my second coat of epoxy had fully cured, it was now time to get down to sanding. The least favorite part of mine for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and start off at the rim, and I'm just gonna really try to smooth things down. Once we get all the sanding done and everything is smoothed out and you don't have any little sharp pokey bits from the glitter, then we're going to do another coat of epoxy, as you really want this to be a smooth surface. And because I'm placing some clear decals, you don't want to see those sand marks up underneath. Once you've made sure you've smoothed everything down, make sure you wash your tumbler with soap and water, get all that dust and debris off before you go in for another coat of epoxy. For this coat, I am again going to be using Fast Set from Counterculture DIY. We're going to go ahead and let this fully cure before moving on to the next step. As always, after your coat of epoxy, use your heat torch to pop any bubbles you may or may not be able to see. For my double scenery, I am going to be using the exact same design. One is clear and one has a white backing. So the first one that I placed is very subtle, which is super delicate. I absolutely love it. So I'm gonna go ahead and place the second one on the back side, hence the double scenery. However, you do not have to place the second decal if you do not want to. I've cut off about 1 inch to 1.5 inches off the backing, just so that I can just line this up ever so perfectly and make sure everything is even before placing this onto my tumbler. Once you're pretty happy with its placement, we're going to go ahead and press that side down, and then we're going to go ahead and use our squeegee tool just to pretty much remove the backing right off the decal. Now that our decals are placed, we're going to go in for what needs to be our final coat of epoxy prior to the epoxy drips. Once we're satisfied with this coat of epoxy, we're then going to go ahead and hit it with the heat torch just to pop any bubbles we may or may not be able to see. Again, this needs to be your final coat before the epoxy drips, as we will not need to epoxy once our epoxy drips have cured. So for the epoxy drips, I mixed 20 mLs total. So 10 mLs of part A and 10 mLs of part B. And I'm going to put this into a little bit of a larger cup, and I am using Artist Resin from Counterculture DIY. I didn't have any type of thickener, so this was really based on time. In order to get my white snow effect, I am using Hippie Crafters Titanium White, and you only need a drop. Stir that in really well. So once I had my paint and my epoxy stirred up really well, I let this set off to the side. I set a timer with my Alexa for 20 minutes. I kept check after that every 10 minutes until I had reached 50 minutes. Now here in Florida, it is unusually very chilly. And quite frankly, anything under 70 degrees, I am freezing to death. So I could have went probably another 15-20 minutes. So my drips were a little longer than I would have preferred. But at the end of the day, it worked. I was super thrilled and excited about that. So at any rate, once I hit that 15-minute mark, I then went in, as I did have the thickness. It was sticky and stringy, and so I really thought at that point we were ready. So best suggestion to you is, if it is a little bit chillier in your area, just take a little bit more time, especially if you don't have any thickener agent to help you out. I also want to point out too, once I got all of my epoxy applied to the rim for my drips, within about 5 minutes I kept checking it. I noticed that I needed to go ahead and flip this upside down. And I probably left it flipped for a good portion of that first hour. Once I thought everything was okay at that point, I went ahead and flipped her right side up, and I allowed this to sit for well over 24 hours just to really make sure that it was fully cured. So once you have allowed this to fully cure, we're now going to go ahead and just clean up this rim. Once you clean the rim, now all you have to do is wash it and your tumbler is complete. And here she is, fully completed. I absolutely adore this tumbler. You'll notice that a couple of my snow drips got really close to going too far, but thankfully I flipped it over and was able to correct that. And at the end of the day, I love it. It's super cute. I really hope that you enjoyed this Christmas double scenery tutorial. If so, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials coming soon. I want to thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, Merry Christmas.